This engine is pretty well the same size, except for the fact it's 2 inches longer. An old excavator will live again with a newer engine. This engine come out of a Dodge, an older Dodge, Cummins 5.9 to replace basically a 5.9 international engine that was built in Germany back in the 70s and the early 80s. Yeah, this is actually a 5.9 that came out of a early Dodge 1989 to 90, 89 and 90, because you see it has a crossover directly from the turbocharger to the intake here with this pipe. And this was only used on Dodge 2 years, 89 and 90. I happen to have this here, which is going to work out perfect. This is what we started with. This engine is a German-built international engine from the 1970s, 1980s. It was not a very good engine to start with. Had lots of troubles, and parts are very, very, very expensive for it. So he brought in what you see. There's no crankshaft in it. As you see, it does have its motor mounts on it. So he wanted a replacement engine. This is 358 cubic inches. The nearest engine that I could find that would replace it would be a 5.9 Cummins that is 359 cubic inches. So 1 cubic inch difference does not make anything difference. This engine is pretty well the same size, except for the fact it's 2 inches longer than the 5.9. However, because there is no crankshaft, we could not determine the depth of the flywheel in this area in order to get our coupling in the right position. So I had nothing to measure with. So I got the customer to bring his rear plate assembly, and I thought it was just going to be a rear plate with the hydraulic pumps bolted to it. However, in this case, it is a complete package. The hydraulic pumps is actually part of the rear plate, but he had to get somebody to help him to take it out of the machine. However, if you're anybody familiar with this type of setup, you have a coupling that's for the word I could not remember in my senior moment was drive lugs. Similar to a Lovejoy coupling, but Lovejoy only has 3, but this has 4. And we have to get them so they're in there deep enough, but not too deep to cause interference with the thrust washer on the crankshaft. So that took some figuring. We built up the flywheel, and then we came up with a 3/4 inch spacer in here, which worked out exactly right. I have several of these spacers here in the shop because I do some other conversions, which I do not use this spacer. It worked out great. And then we fabricated motor mounts, as you see here, on each side here at the rear. On this side, because of the starter, I had to set them out here on spacers and then turn the bottom in to get the exact same distance from here to here on that one. So then we went up front here. Because we had no front crankshaft, I happen to have this, which I use for testing intake systems on a turbocharged engine, and that fit right in the hole. That gave me the basic idea of where the crankshaft would be in order to get my spacing here, center to center, onto this engine also. So we had to make the front mounts with a slight inward curvature to get this distance, and this is exactly right. From here to back to there was no problem. But then also the fan where the fan bolts onto this water pump, we had to get this distance, of course, from here to here the same. And also we had to get the distance from here to the front mount, which is, he just comes right, just basically there. That gives us a distance to the radiator, which is way out here. So these mounts here have to be in the exact same position because there's rubber cushions. So what we did here, see again, we just took this and we got this distance exactly the same as that one. That's how we got a distance for a fan mount, because this engine is shorter than that engine. So we had to make an extra spacer here. And then we got the measurements on the radiator for the lower radiator hose and the top radiator hose, and we came up with this. Also, this engine, the original engine, had a separate pump. I believe it controlled the swing of the machine. I just used the Dodge power steering pump. Hopefully, this is going to be the only thing I'm questioning myself. Is this going to be pump enough to make the machine swing? I think it will, because the original pump on that was a very small little pump. It might be slow, but this guy's he just bought the machine as a hobby machine anyway. So it's a little bit slower than what it could be. I think he'd be able to live with it. If not, we'll have to come up with a different pump. But anyway, we're looking at what, the 7th day of July today, and he's supposed to be here tomorrow to pick it up. So as you see, I extended the heater hoses. I don't know where his heater hoses were hooked up originally, but I just supplied a piece of heater hose on both sides, inlet and outlet. You can join them together. And we've had it running. It runs very well. I didn't completely rebuild the engine. I told them I'd re-ring it, new bearings, new gaskets, and it runs very well. So these parts are still readily available for these engines, and this engine has been replaced by an electronic engine, but there's millions of these engines out there being used in many applications. Not only is it used just happened to come out of a Dodge, but then you can get them into industrial machinery, farm machinery. They're here, there, and everywhere. They come in both the 4-cylinder engine, which is four valve covers instead of 6, except for the length of the block and the crankshaft, and of course, like that. The internal parts are still the same. The pistons, the rods, the bearings are still the same for the 4-cylinder and the 6-cylinder. It is a very tough engine that will stand. There's lots of them out there with over 2 million kilometers, which is 1,600,000 miles on them, still running and running fine. I've used these engines many different applications, and I've had fantastic luck with them. So as you see, it's sometimes when you're doing these conversions, you kind of have to do a lot of head scratching, and you got to visualize what it is. When you don't have something to look at, you've got to visualize what it's going to look like that. And due to the fact that I was born and raised on a farm, I call it barnyard engineering. I've done many oddballs, strange conversions. I've been doing this all my life. I'm now 83 years old. It will be in a very few days. And I've done this all my life, and I thoroughly enjoy it.